Me and Monk's going to get stuck into the F1 over the weekend. So the British Grand Prix occurred at Silverstone. We already spoke about Lando Norris getting mugged at Wembley Stadium.
Pretty crazy.
This was the first sprint race, yeah?
First sprint race, yeah. So
how'd it go?
So the way that the format for the weekend happened. So on Friday, I had the qualifying, which then led into the sprint race, the result of the sprint race would then determine the positions for the main race.
Right.
So sprint race was on the Saturday. I'll just bring up the results here.
And was this for points?
Yes. So it was points. So first place got 3 points. Second place got 2 points. Third place got 1 point.
Yep. They were 3, 2, 1.
Yep. And I guess the months leading up to the event, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is going to be non-event. It's just going to be procession. Like no one's going to be wanting to fight for points in this race because they want to save the cars for the main race." Yep. But yeah, in the end, it turned out to be pretty close race.
Race car drivers going to race.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Many overtakes?
A couple. So Alonso was probably the biggest get. I think he made up 4 positions. In the first lap, I think he made up 9 in total.
Yeah.
Like crazy number. Like he just got an excellent run in the inside.
He
and
got a real good start. I think it was on the outside of the track.
Yeah, with
the
switching the corners,
and then and switching the corners, he made up a
ton
of
of positions. So and then lost a few. Got past the 2 McLarens, and McLarens had to then re-get him, so they could then start 5th and 6th from memory. So he was the biggest get, and then I think Leclerc as well. He was 6th, and then they got up to 4th from memory, but. Yep. They were the 2 kind of main gets, and the inverse, Perez actually span, managed to not put it in the barriers. That was the biggest concern, was putting a car in, damaging a car the night before you're going to have a major race.
Yeah, right.
And have the mechanics spend all night trying to get it ready again. But
they did have to do some repairs, so he started from pit lane.
Luckily enough, it wasn't huge, like he'd put it into the wall or anything like that.
Right.
Just checking the floor, make sure all the arrows all good. But yeah, so he was probably 6th or 7th at the time and started last, essentially.
Yeah.
So he was the big, and that ended up being huge for Red Bull when we get into the actual race.
So success, the sprint race?
I liked it.
Yeah.
Killer for the Australian fans in with it also being England, because it was at 1:30 in the fucking morning.
Yeah, it was.
So it did kill me on Saturday night. But I will say it's the first time I watched. Well, I watched a little bit of the qualifying, but it was the first sprint race, so that's why I tuned in. I was just like, I was up, and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna watch. I watch it. It's at 1:30. It was like, let's do it. But you're watching Formula 1 on a Saturday, so and it's kind of the comparison was the T20. Everyone uses the T20 comparison as like, hey, it's that shorter race that we can get the younger millennial fans in it with the shorter attention spans.
That's right.
That was the exact quote. Almost was like, to get the millennials with the shorter attention spans in the sport. But
good luck. Have you seen TikTok? Fucking put an 8-second video up there of a chick shaking her ass.
Yes, that's probably what they need on the starting grids, and then more millennials will turn in.
Well, I mean, funny you talk about that. So after the race, they had this. It's not really weird, but they sort of brought back like the whole parade.
The parade and the reefs. Yeah.
After the qualifying, they had Max, Lewis, and Valtteri all get onto the back of a semi-trailer, and like take a final lap.
Yeah, do a lap around the course. Wave at the fans.
Wave at the fans and all that sort of stuff, and have interviews. And they gave Verstappen a reef for winning the qualifying. Yeah,
right.
Just turning into a little bit more of that spectacle.
Interesting enough, the last time they gave a reef to a race car driver was, we were just talking about it at the start of the potty, Alan Prost. So it's been almost 30 plus years since they've actually kind of done that. So a bit of history there.
Symbolic more than anything.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but the event overall, I think the numbers was 345,000 people there. 140,000 of those for the actual race day. It was packed. Yeah, there was so many people there.
You not care about
no COVID in the UK.
Yep.
So the big one.
How'd it go?
We should probably talk about the opening race. The big news. Matt, do you want to get some video up? The Hamilton crash. Causing crash, He definitely caused a crash. So Hamilton causes a crash. Max hits the wall very, very hard. Out. His car's trash. Like it's absolute trash after this. Whole one side is completely torn apart. Max out of this race. We're talking half a lap in.
Right. Early drama.
Super early. Opening lap of the race. Max is out. So the question very much is who was right or wrong in this? And there's some really good analysis, some really good kind of insight, the laws and the rules. So the wheel to wheel. Hamilton needs to take Verstappen over. Verstappen over. Just considering his car runs so much better in clear air and how strong Max has been.
Right.
Hence our video saying, Max absolutely dominates. Can anyone catch him? You can if you take him out. So, Hamilton's all over him in this opening lap.
And I think
side by side. Excellent action. They were very good at giving each other room leading up to this.
Yep. I think the sprint race sort of set the tone as well, because Max started from pole for the sprint race and then started from pole in the main race. So it was really that you need to get in front.
So the camera work on this is absolutely excellent as well. So boom, hits him here. The gravel trap does absolutely nothing.
Jeez, yeah, that didn't slow him down at all, did it?
Hits that wall doing anywhere from 150 to 200 Ks, I reckon. Because it was technically in a braking zone, but it would have been very, very fast.
I can't remember if it was on Verstappen's Instagram or a news article, but 51 Gs he hit that wall at.
What?
Yeah.
51 Gs.
Yeah. And he walked away with a concussion.
Isn't 5 Gs meant to be big?
Oh, yes, big time.
They pull 5 Gs in some of the tight corners,
Yes.
tight, fast corners, but yeah.
Fucking hell.
But that gravel trap, he's going so quick, he literally just skips across it. It doesn't even slow him down.
Do anything.
He bounces over the top of it and he goes whack into that wall. Hits it. He was 100% winded. It's knocked all the air out of him.
All right, so explain it to me. I'm an F1 nuffy.
Boom! It buries it in the tire wall.
I've really am a very, very casual fan of motor racing. To me, untrained eye, it looks like Hamilton's giving him a little flick there.
Well, he's definitely very, very inside him, and he does pull out a little bit. So he does brake a little bit, but not enough. The kind of regulations is he almost gets, if you watch it, he gets wing to wing. They very, very get to that point.
Okay.
So Max is maybe meant to give him room.
Not on that corner.
No, I wouldn't have thought so either. I think there was, what happened is both drivers expected the other driver to concede or at least back out of it a little bit or give more room than they did. The problem is they're both fighting for a world championship. And
it's
essentially whoever wins this corner is probably going to end up winning this race.
So I think from what I saw on the onboard for Lewis, so Max has the corner. He's in front. He has, I guess for lack of a better word, right away. He has the racing line. He does turn into Hamilton, trying to take the apex of the corner at his speed. Hamilton, which was also explained by, I guess, the
various commentators on all the
Jensen
actually pointed it out as well.
Yes, he was commented as not having taken his apex of the turn.
Exactly,
he never tried to take the best line for himself. He just cruised around the corner, and you could kind of see from his onboard he didn't ever try to swerve out of Verstappen's way.
Right.
Yeah. What I thought was interesting as well, he started on dirty medium, so they'd already done some laps during qualifying on it, whereas I think Max had fresh tyres. Maybe it didn't look like a huge amount of understeering on that. Maybe he couldn't have made that corner, that apex as well, which means that's why he was so far over. I kind of thought about that a little bit too, and that's why he's hit him so hard in the contact. I'm not sure if you need to show it there from the onboard from Hamilton, but that kind of will show you Peps at least what we're talking about. Play from there somewhere. Yeah, there. That, when we're talking about apex, we're essentially talking about the curb and the line.
Yep.
So when Hamilton comes up the side here, so look, you're looking at the corner on the right. He's meant to be hitting that line, and he's so far away from
Yeah,
it. So
but seriously, from watching it from that angle, it happens so quick.
so quick.
that's F1. It's like everything's crazy.
Can he swerve? Like, can Lewis swerve out of the way there?
Yeah. Or could he be more over the right?
Could he be more to the right? Yeah.
Essentially, I think it's like they should have slowed down a little bit and conceded the position to Max in this point. But, so following on from that, Leclerc did, as we saw in the highlights, Leclerc does make it through that position because Hamilton's kind of trying to recover after just whacking Max. They did red flag the race, so Leclerc was in first and Hamilton was second. The race pretty much hold station for not hold station, but there wasn't a huge amount of overtakes. There's a little bit, of course, in the middle field. There's heaps of stuff. Yeah. McLaren got into their position. They 4 and 5, and Ricciardo did an excellent job holding off Sainz for almost the entire second half of the race.
Yeah.
But it was really the whole action was Hamilton just having enough pace and tyres after serving. You got a 10-second penalty out of this, which is the second lowest penalty you can get.
Okay. Yep.
So 5 seconds is the other one.
Yep.
Stop and go where you can't change your tyres. So you got 10 seconds. So you got to go in his pit window, sit for 10 seconds. Then they do work on the car and then he can go.
Right.
Yeah. So it's the second lowest one. He comes out and then chases Leclerc down. That's essentially the race. He was chasing Leclerc down the whole time. He gets him with 2 laps to go, I think, ends up winning the British Grand Prix. Monks, what did you think penalty-wise in all that? Did you think that was fair? And I don't want to say considering Max ended up in hospital in this. He did have to go over and get checked, and they checked him all over. Luckily, fine. Probably can race at Hungary in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah.
It's Hungary, from memory.
Yeah, I think it is.
I mean, it's hard to say. Like, you don't want to say... Yeah, it is hard to say because at face value, it very much looks like it's just a racing incident. Like... Unfortunate set of circumstances. I think Hamilton was on the radio pretty much straight after saying he turned into me. So whether
Hamilton
that's intentional or not, what happened behind the scenes, he at least at face value says that he thought he was right away. Verstappen ran into him. So it's hard to say. 10 seconds is fair enough. You'd think at that level, the fact that they had to red card the race, do you do a stop and go? That puts him, because that stop and go has to happen
outside a pit stop.
Yeah, and also has to happen within 3 laps. So within those first 3 laps,
it's technically like
a lot more condensed.
It's a 30-second penalty, really.
Yeah, well, for the time it takes him to get through pit lane and all that sort of stuff.
But versus the 10 he got
seconds.
on top of he's already pit stop. Like it's an additional 30 that he would have had to do on top of his pit stop, which would have put him right at the end of the field.
Especially within those first 3 laps, the field's already condensed. They haven't raced the 5, 10, 15 laps. They haven't spread the field out. So he could have come in back of the field and had to work his way back up, which would have, again, you could say that's justified because he's taken a championship contender out. So...
We'll take you out and then see what you can do from there.
But it's hard to say because you don't want to say, like, because Hamilton has been on top for so long, he does get that sort of talk that, like, he should know better, he should do better, he should be hit harder with penalties,
right?
Because, and like, we've seen a lot of commentary, like on social media and stuff, like, what a flog. He's done that on purpose and all that sort of stuff.
People have found footage of him doing it multiple times throughout his career.
He's
like
done
something
it to Albon twice last season. I think it was last season.
Yeah.
So you think the 10-second penalty is justified, or you think it's a slap on the wrist?
I think it's okay.
And I tend to agree with James on this because, again, they want wheel-to-wheel racing. Like, you want to be competitive racing. You don't... You're going to get some of this shit. Like, that's happening. We're on the opening lap as well. Like, this stuff happens.
Yeah. And me as a casual fan, this is the most engaged I've been for a while.
Yeah. And I mean, we're talking about the other week back at
Austria?
For Austria, yes. Like, they were handing out penalties left, right and centre that were excessive. This has gone the other way. It's just like the NRL. They've gone too extreme. They've gone back the other way. Exactly.
Well. Again, it depends on who the stewards are and who they're looking at. So, yeah.
And I mean, we were talking about it beforehand, before the podcast as well. We look at the battles between Alan Prost and Ayrton Senna. The the purpose collisions that Senna made, I guess, running into Prost in a couple of races, like it happens. Like it's whether it's a strategy of the sport, whether
was it intentional?
Yeah, and whether there is a place for it in the sport, it's hard to say. Like obviously you're putting people's life
exactly.
in danger.
You don't want to put a guy in a barrier doing 200 k's an hour and pulling 55 G's. Like yes, the cars are significantly well designed to prevent injuries. Touch on wood that Max walking away from this with barely anything. And maybe just a head knock. Like credit to the full design of that car, but anything could go wrong in there. Like that thing jackknifes on the gravel and then it flips over. Like you could land
different story.
100% different story.
That's it. Well, again, we're talking before the podcast, just talking about the halo as well. Like you have a look at the replay, the wheel that Hamilton snaps off Verstappen's car comes back around and hits the halo like right where if that's not there, that's hitting Verstappen in the head at a couple hundred k's an hour. So it's very hard to say whether the penalty was justified.
And it's always going to be challenging with wheel to wheel racing, especially in an open wheel format like the F1 is. Versus and we've got some supercar notes down the bottom there, but
close wheel. With
the supercars where they'll bash panels and run into each other all the time because they can keep going. Like yes, excessive hitting of cars and banging wheels together will break things, but it's in this where it's such a fine line. And after this, like two other cars had punctures because of debris on the track from all the various instances that happened. So, a lot of stuff does happen in there. But you want racing, you want these guys like the opening corners. Everyone's gone losing their fucking minds. Like the crowd's going bananas. Like listen to the British crowd. Every time Hamilton made a dive, you're super engaged. Like this race started at midnight for us, our time. And, I turned it on. I was like, I did a super late night the night before trying to watch the sprint race. And I was like, I'll see how this starts. And you watch that in the open lap and you go, holy fuck, what's going to go on from here? And you tune in and you stay there. You're not tuning in, staying in for the crashes, but you're tuning in for the drama, essentially, and the entertainment.
The theatre.
And you want to see what happens after that. Like, what are they going to do with Hamilton? What happens next? Like, that's what kind of gets you engaged. You want to see that competition. The contest, as we keep talking about, and all the other things, you want to see that contest. So I kind of lean towards like it was probably fair enough penalty. It was wheel to wheel racing. They probably don't want to be injuring each other, but shit like that happens. It's motor racing.
Shit happens.
Yeah, and I think probably what made it seem worse was after the race. Obviously, Hamilton is excited that he won.
So
didn't really recognize what had happened at the time.
A lot of people weren't real happy.
Anything about it?
I'd say more international than English fans.
Yes.
But on the podium, the words were people kind of said that Lewis was disrespectful to Max.
Okay.
Kind of said, it was his own fault. He shouldn't have been doing it. Like no fault of mine at all. 100% blame on Max.
And Max on his social media as well also is like kind of called Hamilton out a little bit, saying there's no place for this in the sport, thinking that it wasn't an intentional move.
No one should be diving in that corner essentially at those kind of speeds. That move was never happening.
Right.
And they've gone back and forth on Twitter and stuff like that. And then Hamilton's definitely outside of England got a bit of a grub tag through social media. The cheetah thrown out a little bit. And, I think it's there. He hasn't won a race since
early May.
Since Spain. Early May. So I think 5 races from memory. He needed a win. Like they needed points.
The Esky curse last week. Could anyone catch Verstappen? And now
run him off the road. Yes, you
run him off the road. Massive. It's only 8 points difference now between Verstappen.
Talking
and
about
Hamilton.
Perez before, like he didn't score in the points. He did make it into 10th, I think, from memory, but they pitted him for tyres so he could take the fastest lap away from Lewis to essentially not gain a point for Perez, but take a point off Lewis, which gives an extra point for Max, essentially.
Right, with you.
Super shout out for Perez here. It's like, hey, that's massive teamwork there. You're helping Max possibly winning a world championship in that regard.
Actually, also on that, so on the flip side, towards the end of the race, it was Leclerc, Bottas, Hamilton 1, 2, 3. Bottas gave up his position for Hamilton so that he could. So I'm assuming Hamilton was running faster than Bottas at the moment.
It was way quicker.
So he gave up his position so that Hamilton can chase down Leclerc and make podium, pick up that extra.
Another great teamwork.
So teamwork from the Mercedes boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, there's a lot of strategy to it. I think it was very unfortunate that Perez spun out in the sprint because he would have been that stopgap sort of sitting 4-5 to slow down the rest of the field.
Let's say he's in front of the McLarens. And,
Yeah.
and he'd be fighting there with Bottas and trying to push into that podium.
That's it. And if they got their pit strategy right, he could have pulled out in front of Hamilton for a bit. If he pitted before Hamilton, slow his race down. So, yeah. Unfortunate, but yeah.
And it's been quite interesting kind of mentioning the tiers. So I think Constructors is now 8 points. No, 8 points in the Drivers' Champions, maybe 7 in the Constructors. Like both championships now super close with Red Bull, of course, scoring no points, 4 points, no points in this race. So that's really tightened up the top end. So Mercedes, Red Bull, I think it's going to be one of those guys winning both of those championships. Then you've got Ferrari and McLaren really heating up in their barrel. Leclerc second, Sainz sixth, and then Ricciardo and Lando being 4 and 5. They're super close for that third spot and competing in that space. So that battle, like those 4 teams are kind of locked out the top for 6 spots, 8 spots, essentially. It'll be one of those guys. And then you've got the interesting from the Aston Martins further down, and AlphaTauri, Alonso, and that kind of like, in that middle pack. Yeah. So it's kind of interesting that they've kind of 2 tiers there now. It's very, very clear at this stage. Lando keeps scoring points, so I think he could always be there. He needs to really sneak some wins, but he's the only driver to score in every race. So as long as he keeps that consistent and keeps scoring good points, he's going to be there and thereabouts.
So he's on 113. So that is 64 points behind Lewis.
Yeah. So I don't. As we said, he's the only one that could maybe make a shout there. McLaren, I think, have got different orders. They're trying to beat Ferrari at this point. Maybe he can sneak a race or two, but I think there's the 2 different tiers there, very much. It was great to see Danny Rick, our boy Danny Ricciardo, get a 5th place. That's his highest position. He had a few 6th.
Sixth 3 times. So
trying to getting used to this car now, which I think, hopefully getting used to this car. If he's not, which is what a lot of people kind of haven't realised. Like he's still finishing 5th and 6th with a car he's not real comfortable with. Maybe, and Lando did finish, I think, 14 or 15 seconds ahead of him in this race. But hey, that's 14 or 15 seconds Ricciardo could maybe find in this car, and then he could actually start challenging into that top 4.
Sure thing.
Who knows? We'll see. But I'm not as down on Ricciardo as a lot of everyone else kind of is in the media. I think he's doing a job there at McLaren, and I'm really liking the fight between them and Ferrari because they do compete a lot and they have a lot of good racing on the track versus Mercedes and Red Bull. We're kind of separated, but they're, if they're either so far in front of the other one, there's not real great racing happening. Whereas Ferrari and McLaren, like Ricciardo and Sainz, back-to-back races, just constantly following each other. The last one, Sainz had better tyres, got the job done. This one, Danny held him off for 20 to 30 laps, so it was impressive.
Yeah, it definitely makes it seem like it's very impressive, very promising for next season. So